والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. ثم أما بعد, first of all we thank the Sheikh Imam Shakeel. يقول المعروف لا يعرف, we just do it for the sake some brothers might know Sheikh Shakeel. He is the Imam of Lusham and Red Bridge Masjid, and the Sheikh finished studies in Medina في الشريعة. He is involved in the da'wah, subhanallah, all over London. May Allah give him the barakah in his time and his family, inshallah ta'ala. And I'll leave you with the Sheikh, inshallah ta'ala.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the bestower of mercy, we praise Allah Jalla wa Ala. We seek aid in Allah Ta'ala. We seek forgiveness from Allah Ta'ala for our sins, and we seek refuge and protection in Allah from the evil of our souls and the evil of our actions. I bear witness that there is nothing worthy of worship except Allah, who is alone and free of any partners. And I bear witness that I believe in all the prophets and messengers of Allah, and that the last and final messenger of Allah, the Imam of the messengers, the best of the messengers, the leader of the messengers, is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. Brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to thank the brothers from Al-Najashi Center, Masjid Najashi, for giving me this opportunity to be here with you today. Inshallah, I see everybody's a bit tired, so I want you to be interactive, inshallah, and I want you to do this lecture today. Yes, I want you to do this lecture. What I mean by this is, what's our topic first? What's the topic? So I want everybody to stay awake. Look at Abdullah, he's sitting upright, see, he's already awake. His back is straight, he's got nothing in the back, so I want everybody to be like Abdulaziz. Yes, what's the title?
Identity of the Muslims.
Identity of the Muslims?
Of the Muslim families in the West.
Of the Muslim families, yeah? Islamic identity of the Muslim family. That's the topic and theme. So stay awake, inshallah, and inshallah you're going to be helping me. Before we start with you helping and mentioning points, inshallah, just some muqaddimat, or some introductory points. The first one is, what has Allah Ta'ala chosen for us? What has Allah Ta'ala chosen for us?
Islam.
Islam. Yes, Allah Jalla wa Ala tells in the Quran, إِنَّ دِينَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الْإِسْلَامِ. The deen with Allah Jalla wa Ala is only al-Islam. Allah Ta'ala in the same surah Al Imran, Allah Ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِ غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Whoever seeks another way of life other than al-Islam, it will be never accepted from him or her, and in the hereafter he or she will be of the losers. I'm mentioning this with our theme, saying, look, Allah Ta'ala has chosen this way of life for us, al-Islam, so we will be looking at Islam. Yeah, or we need to be looking at Islam to find a solution of having a proper Islamic family in the West. And likewise, Allah Jalla wa Ala in Surah Al-Baqarah tells us, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا ادْخُلُوا فِي السِّلْمِ كَافَّةً. Or you believe, enter into the deen of Islam completely, i.e., we need to be taking all of what Allah Jalla wa Ala has given us, whether it be from the Quran or the Sunnah, and implement it in our thinking, and implement it in our life, and implement it in our family, so we can have that Islamic identity in our families, living, whether we're living in the West or in other countries. So with that, those 2 points, I want you to inshallah help me in today's discussion and today's topic. What would you say is a first point in us establishing a Muslim family or an Islamic identity in our families in the West? Help me. Before I ask Abdulaziz, somebody else. What do you think? Okay, you might be different from mine. I've got something in my mind. Might be different, doesn't matter. What do you think? What would be your point? Sheikh Saeed?
I've looked at you.
Sorry?
I've looked at you not.
Al-ilm. Okay. Very important. Because when we say, look, this is Islam, when we say Allah Ta'ala has chosen al-Islam, when we say, look, we need to be following all aspects of Islam, how are we going to know what this Islam is? How are we going to know these ahkam or rules and regulations except by al-ilm? Yes? And sometimes we might not know, but then we know, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ ذِكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. You ask people who know. But in a general way, we know Allah Jalla wa Ala emphasizes ilm for us. Allah Ta'ala tells us, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Allah Ta'ala makes a statement saying, say, are those the same who know and those who do not know? Are they the same? Allah Ta'ala is asking in a question form, but at the same time making a statement. Allah Ta'ala praises the ulama when Allah Ta'ala says, شَهِدَ اللَّهُ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهِ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ وَأُولُو الْعِلْمِ. Allah Ta'ala says that Allah bears witness that there is nothing worthy of worship except Allah Ta'ala. Allah attaches to His shahada, the shahada of the bearing witnessing of the angels, and attaches to that the shahada of the possessors of ilm, i.e. the ulama. And that's why when we focus on the difference between khawf and khashya, the difference between khawf and khashya is fear, khawf is fear, and khashya is a type of fear which comes from ilm. Yes, so Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهِ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Those who have khashya, because it's a type of fear which is more deeper than just al-khawf. It's a type of fear which is attached to ilm. And the ulama have that khashya of Allah Jalla wa Ala. The Prophet ﷺ in the authentic hadith al-Bayhaqi, he said, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. Seeking ilm, seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. So, the first thing would be having that ilm of the book of Allah Ta'ala or the sunnah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And if we don't have that ilm, we can be asking people who have that ilm so we know which direction are we going in. Because the challenges we are facing are very great. Because you have a direction where somebody will say, look, leave al-Islam. Of course they won't say leave Islam, but they will put it in a way that in essence you'll be leaving certain ahkam of Islam to fit into society. And this, will only happen when we're not really referring back to that ilm of the book of Allah Ta'ala and the sunnah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There are thawabit and principles and things which are fixed and firm that we can't change in today's society or in any other society or even before or later on. These are fixed principles that we need to be abiding by to have a healthy Islamic identity and a healthy Islamic family. So ilm is crucial. And after ilm, as Saeed mentioned, what would you say next?
Amal.
Amal. Okay. Amal in a general way, very important. We want to be a bit specific in the sense of our topic of discussion. But in a general way, yes, when we are praying, when we are fasting, all these things are helping. But we want to focus on a specific discussion today, i.e. of building a healthy Islamic identity in our families, so that inshallah we can survive in this climate of challenges.
Teaching Islamic behavior.
Teaching Islamic behavior. Okay. So, you could say tarbiyah, cultivation of ourselves. I would say before we come to that, because that's one of the points I wanted to mention is, before we come to that, is the starting point of a Muslim family. What would be the starting point?
Akhlaq.
Okay, himself having akhlaq, but let's say you want to start a family. What would be your starting point before this?
Marriage.
Yes?
Finding
a spouse or marriage. Yes? Marriage. So we say in Arabic, اختيار الزوج or الزوجة. Selecting a spouse, selecting a wife, selecting a husband. Very, very important, because now what happens? Somebody's married for 10 years, 15 years. And what do you hear? First thing, they want to rush. And when people say, don't rush, take it easy. They say, no, you're against marriage. You are preventing us from marriage. Or sometimes even parents, they might say no, and the child thinks, the parents are against me marrying. They're not against him or her marrying. They know the child, and they know that this person that the child wants to marry is not really going to be suitable. And it's going to end up in destruction or divorce. So sometimes you have people who are married for 10, 15, maybe 20 years, and now they say, look, you know what, I made a mistake. I made a mistake getting married to this lady, or I made a mistake getting married to this man. Yes? Someone will be able to be patient, so you just be patient and say, look, I've done it, let me be patient, it's been 10 years, I've got children. Others will say, I can't be patient. So he or she will divorce and so on. But going back to the essence in terms of making sure, but this is one of the greatest decisions in life. So we were in a class in Medina one time, and the sheikh, he asked, he said, look, when does the tarbiyah of a child start? So one person said, look, at the age of 15, 16, bulugh. Another one said, you know, when he's tamiz, i.e. a child can know right and wrong, 7, 8. Another one said, look, when the child is born. So what do you think is the right one? Before he's born.
Before he get married.
Yes, ikhtiyar al-zawj or zawja. The tarbiyah will start when you select that spouse. When you select that wife, or you select that husband, in the back of your mind, look, this is going to be the father of my children, or this one is going to be the mother of my children. That's when the tarbiyah actually starts. Because once you've selected the wrong one, khalas, it's too late. That mother or that father will give that tarbiyah that he or she is accustomed to. So, selecting the right spouse as a crucial criteria of having Islamic identity. And sometimes, you know, what's that famous Arab poem? They say, نُعِيبُ زَمَانَنَا وَالْعَيْبُ فِينَا. And afterward, وَلَيْسَ لِزَمَانِنَا عَيْبٌ سِوَانَا. So we complain that it's the time. Yeah, very common. It's the zaman of the time we're living in. In essence, the poem says, look, we are to blame. Yeah? So sometimes when we focus on tarbiyat al-awlad and Islamic families or Muslim families, the same problems are in Muslim countries. Those people who are not religious in Islamic countries are not religious here. Those people who are not observing Islam and want to practice Islam there, then they're not going to be practicing Islam. Let's not say, look, it's just because we're in the West, because we're in Britain, because it's the time we're living in, alamatu sa'a, and so on and so on and so on. It's not always the case. It influences, but it's not always the case. So very, very important in terms of ikhtiyar al-zawj or zawja, selecting that spouse. What did the Prophet ﷺ say in the hadith concerning the 4 things? Yeah, what's the hadith in Arabic? A woman is married.
تنكح المرأة لأربع. بمالها
Yes.
وحسبها
Say it all again.
لمالها
لمالها
وجمالها ودينها.
Deen one comes at the end.
وجمالها وحسبها لمالها وجمالها وحسبها ونسبها
ولدينها.
فاظفر بذات الدين.
تربت يدها. So the Prophet said in this hadith, a woman is married for 4 things. The first one,
لمالها.
wealth. Yeah? I.e., a man wants to marry this woman, you know she's wealthy. I'm poor, I'm on income support here. This one, the father left her millions. That's going to be a good one for me. Yeah? I can sit in her home and just live off her. Yeah? Smile. Yeah, but in this country, so look, she has a house, council house. Yeah? They give her her own income. It'll be different, yeah? Okay, so first one will be mal. What's the second one?
Beauty.
Beauty. Yes? Jamal. Yes? And this is the one that most people will go for. Yeah? Forget the mal, forget everything else, and you know, the Jamal is the most important one. Then, reputation and social status. Yeah?
It's coming from noble high family.
Noble family, well-known family, superior in a lineage in a family, she's this and this. So that's the third one, social status. And the last one, deen. So while the Prophet mentioned the 4th one, at the end he said, فَاظْفَرْ بِذَاتِ دِينٍ تَرِبَتْ يَدَاكَ. Go for the one who has deen, and you will be successful.
Can we find one who has got all these 4?
You can try, you can try. I will look for you, and if I find it, then I will go for that one. So anyway, deen. Because some of these things, they go away. Yeah? The wealth can go, the beauty can go, the woman gets pregnant, you know, she loses her beauty, changes. The one that stays, وَالْبَاقِيَاتُ الصَّالِحَاتُ, the things that remain are more important, deen. Yes? And deen, of course, when we focus on deen, we mean by deen in a very comprehensive way, which we'll come to when we just mention the brother's points. Yeah, a very comprehensive way. Allah Jalla wa Ala, the ayah that we mentioned, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu udkhulu fi silmi kaffa. Or you believe, enter into deen completely. So Ibn Kathir says, taking all of the rules and regulations and accepting all of them and acting according to them to the best of one's ability. So when we say deen, it doesn't mean she wears jilbab, she wears hijab, and she prays and she fasts, and that's enough. Because that's another disaster. That's another disaster. Yes? And we see that, okay, she judges by a brother, he comes to the masjid and he prays, he's on deen, she wears jilbab and niqab, and she's on deen, and that's it, they want to marry straight away. It's much more than this. The other side is, what did the Prophet say about men? إذا أتاكم من ترضون دينه وخلقه فزوجوه إلا تفعلوا تكن فتنة في الأرض وفساد عريض. The Prophet ﷺ said, if a man comes to you and you are pleased with his deen and his khuluq, then get him married off. I.e., speaking to the awliya al-umur, the wali or the fathers. And if you have a daughter and a man comes and you're happy with his deen and khuluq, then get him married off, because if you don't do this, there will be fitna upon earth and great corruption. Again, the emphasis on men being the importance of deen and khuluq, the importance of religion and character. When deen is mentioned, khuluq is part of deen. But the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is mentioning it separately, i.e. to further give emphasis that this, which is also part of deen, but it has its own emphasis, i.e. a person should have good and noble characteristics. And again the same thing. When we come to the deen, or when we focus on deen, a person's deen, when we say he's in the masjid, he's praying, yeah, or he's wearing a thobe, and he's got a big beard, and we see him in the masjid, and we say, look, that's a sign that the person is a good Muslim. And that's it, we stop there. And that's not the only sign. That's not the only sign. Yes, a very, very important sign of a man, deen-wise, and character-wise, that the man should be working. That the man should be working, a man. Yes, when they define in Arabic and they say, look, rajul. They say a rujula is not something that you are born with. A rujula, they say, is iktisab. You earn rujula, you earn being a man. I.e., you must have qualities of a man to be a man. And part of the qualities of a man is that he provides. And that's why in the other hadith, when the Prophet doesn't say concerning the youngsters, Ya ma'ashar al-shabab, man istata'a minkum al-ba'a falyatazawwaj. Whoever has, or youngsters, whoever has the means to get married, then he should get married. Has the means. When the scholars mention al-istita'a, they say the physical means, yes, the emotional and mental means, and the financial means. Yes, emotionally and mentally, and physically and financially, three main parts of this istita'a, that he should have this to be that rujula, have that rujula and be that man and be worthy of getting married. So ikhtiyar of zawj or zawja, when we focus on deen, which is the most important thing, we mean by deen a very comprehensive understanding of deen, i.e. completely. And what we find that some of the problems, a person says he's on deen, or she might say on deen. Yes, so we had a case. Brother got married to a sister. Sister's wearing niqab, jilbab, the brother's wearing thobe, and ahl masajid and so on. So they have a problem. So he's telling me this, they have a problem, and there's an argument, and then they both sit down, and what do you think they do? Yeah, they have an argument or a fight. What do you think they do after the argument fight?
Divorce?
Not divorce, before that, they start. What's this? Split. Yes? Yeah, they take this, and so when he's telling me, I'm saying, look, what's happened to deen? Or between argumentation and differences, the person curses, swears. Some statements or some things, when you tell people and you discuss it with the ulama, it's going to say, look, in fact, sometimes they'll tell you, I don't want to be involved with these brothers, because this is like jahil stuff. This is not people of masjid and people of deen that we can be involved in advice. That if that is happening, how are we going to build an Islamic family, an Islamic unit, an Islamic household in any society? So ikhtiyar al-zawj and zawja is a critical point in us establishing a healthy Islamic family in the West, or be it in any other country. And when we look at the example of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his family, before we move on to the next point, how is a relationship between a husband and wife supposed to be? How is our relationships? And how is traditionally, you find in Muslim countries, More so, look, the dad will come home. Yes, the dad comes home and the children straight away they're quiet. Yeah, they have to be quiet. You know, everybody stops, just can't do anything because dad is there. You're going to get a beating. So you'll find that lack of communication, the lack of understanding. You know, even my mom, sometimes my children go to mom's house or dad's house, they'll be like fighting, screaming. So she tells them, look, when your dad was small, you know, and his dad comes in, that's it. All the kids are quiet, stop, and so on. While we might see this as positive, really it shows you, look, there's no real gelling and bonding and communication. A husband and wife's relationship is supposed to be friendship. Yeah, this is what we miss. We miss this point. Yeah, the Prophet in one hadith he said, marry and akiffa. Like a sense of compatibility between one another. So one of the sheikhs he says in one of his lectures speaking about marriage, he says he never understood a hadith. Yeah, the hadith of the Prophet said, he said a husband is sleeping or a wife is sleeping and one of them sprinkles water on the other one to wake them up for the prayer, for tahajjud. So he says he never really understood this. He said then he studied the life of the Prophet ﷺ with his wives. He studied it completely in depth. And then he understood this hadith. So he gave a similitude. Yeah? He said, look, it's like when you go on a journey. You go with your friends. So let's say you're in your home. And your son or your daughter or your wife, they try to wake you up. Yeah? Or vice versa towards a wife. Generally, what do? Do you get upset? We get upset. Yeah, we get upset. Let me sleep a bit more. Don't wake me up. I told you wake me up at 5 o'clock, not at 4:30. You're angry, you're upset, you scream, you shout. Generally the case. Now, you go on a journey with your friends, yes? Your young friends, your age, and you're on the camping journey, and you're tired, you've been driving for long. Then, you know, you want to get a bit of rest, 2-3 hours sleep before Fajr. But after an hour, your friend comes and he sprinkles water and he teases you and he doesn't want you to sleep. He plays some games on you. You get angry. You get angry generally. You do? You don't. No, with friends you don't. You laugh, you tease him, and you get him back the next night. This is friendship. He says this is how he understood that hadith after looking at the Prophet ﷺ and his wives and how he was in terms of that friendship and that love between himself and his wives. So that's a key ingredient in terms of a healthy family and a healthy Islamic identity for our families in the West and any other part of the world. So, we mentioned ilm, yeah? We mentioned selecting the spouse, yeah, as a key for having that healthy family. What's next? You wanted to mention something, Muhammad?
I just want to say a relationship between a husband and wife must be based on harmony, love, affection, understanding, and trust. If there is not this ingredient based on this as form of tools, the marriage will not be very successful. And that bond relationship between the two can be mutually exclusive and based on real trust and understanding.
So Muhammad mentioned many points. Yeah, all of them, you know, very beneficial and worthy of taking note. You know, Allah Ta'ala says, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. That He has placed in you, in yourselves, there is love between the spouses and rahmah and mercy. So that affection, that kindness, that trust, that love, that understanding, all of that is an ingredient for, in terms of a healthy marriage. But put the marriage side aside now. Yeah, so we focus on the ikhtiyar al-zawj and zawja issue. Anything else other than that now to build a healthy family? Yeah? Abdul Aziz? Yes, Ismail. Sheikh Ismail just came with something. Ismail, tell us. Could be for youngsters now. We could focus on, you know, the rights or relationship between parents and youngsters, or youngsters and parents, yeah, or youngsters in general. That could be another point that we can focus on. What do you think? Who said it? Tarbiyah. Tarbiyatul awlad. Okay. Cultivation of children. That's general. Anything specific in that? Again, see one problem. We might see. That's why I mentioned in the muqaddimah. Look, comprehensive look at the Quran and Sunnah. First we said, look, that's our guidance. Islam is our guidance. Islam is our, point of turn and point of judgment and measurement and so on. Then we mentioned ilm as the first point. So having that ilm and going back to that ilm, and if we don't know, asking Ahlul ilm and so on. Because why? Sometimes when we're going to focus on tarbiyah, most of you are going to say what? Yeah, what are you going to say? Look, okay, tell them to pray salah, good. Tell them to read Quran, good. Tell them to come to the masjid, good. But we're going to stop. And after that, we're going to find it difficult. What else? What else? Okay, yeah, camping. Yes, what else? But I want it to be wider than this. Because even with our youngsters, yes, let's say you have children, each one is different. Yeah, one likes reading, he'll come home and pick up a book and just read himself. Yeah, another one, well, he likes physical activity, so he will come home, maybe do his homework and say, look, I want to go out and play football. He's a physical type. Another one, he wants the PS3 and something else. Everyone is different. And Islam caters for those needs. And when we sometimes say, look, you know what, you've only got one need. This is the only thing for you. Yeah, you can only make hifd of Quran and memorize Quran, and that's the only thing we've given you. And this person can't. Then in a way, it's like a dhulm to him, because you really didn't understand what he really wanted and needed. So what will happen? That person then, he's pushed to something he doesn't like, but then eventually he can't do no more. And that usually happens when he's of age. Yeah, so meaning, okay, 6, 7, 8, 9, push, and he will do it. Or when he becomes 16, 17 in this country, in society, you're going to tell your dad, you know what, Mom, that's it. I'm going. I've got my own place. I'm going to get my own place. I can't take it no more, and so on. So we've got to have the comprehensive understanding to protect them and to keep them in deen, but to give them something that they are being created for, or it's in their kind of like tabi'ah, in their kind of like natural disposition. So we look at the Sahaba, for example. You have Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. So what was Abu Hurairah's speciality? Memorizing specifically hadith. So he narrated the most hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. The most. He was the one who narrated the most hadith from the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. And while people were farming and busy with other things, he would stay in the masjid and he would memorize and relate and narrate a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. That was his speciality. Hassan ibn Thabit, what was his speciality? Poetry. Okay. Was he a fighter? Yeah, which battle was it? The Prophet's aunt? Yeah, the battle of Ahzab, of the ditch. And his aunt, the Prophet's aunt, was in, or his wife maybe, aunt or wife, and she was in the fortress, and an enemy came to attack behind Hassan, and she said, look, fight him. He said, look, it's not for me. I can't do this. Yeah. But when the kuffar or the enemies would attack the Prophet ﷺ, he would defend the Prophet ﷺ with poetry. Yes, so you had him. Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu, they would say, look, he would sometimes, firstly, he memorized very little of the Quran. Secondly, he would make mistakes in recitation. But he had this vision from a young age. He was a fighter and a warrior. From a young age, fighting, training, wrestling, this, and so on. Fight with 2 swords. Yeah. So this is his direction. So meaning, even when we're focusing on tarbiyatul awlad, okay, or cultivation of children, looking into what is good for them, what direction I can push them towards, and why, look, we might say, look, it's bad society or a bad place. In essence, the opportunities are great. There's so much a Muslim can do here and remain a good Muslim. And even the opportunities of cultivating children. Yeah, we might say, look, okay, I can't hit and beat, and I can in a Muslim country. But is that really what we want? No. Is that really the tarbiyah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Is that the interaction of the Prophet with his children and with the children around him? Yeah, Fatima radiallahu anha knocks on the door. What does he do? He gets up, opens the door, and where he was sitting, he says, Fatima, sit on my seat. Yeah, especially with his own children. He tells Anas ibn Malik, Anas, go and do this for me. He says, no, Messenger, I don't want to do it. He leaves him. Then he sees him in Medina later on the streets. He said, Anas, did you do it? Anas says, narrates, and he says, look, I feel ashamed. And I said, oh Messenger of Allah, I'm going to go and do it right now. Abdullah ibn Abbas is sitting on the right hand side of the Prophet ﷺ, and he has some other guests. He says to Abdullah ibn Abbas, the ones who are after you, they are elder, they're more elderly. Can I start with them first, serving them? He said, no, Messenger of Allah, I'm your first person on your right, start with me. He starts with him. Hassan and Hussein, we know the examples. So I'm saying, there's many opportunities, many things that we can do here to build healthy youngsters, healthy teenagers, and at the same time solidify our families, and ourselves in the West. But focusing on tarbiyah, I want to mention a few points attached to it. What do you want to mention? Anything you want to mention? Youngsters, what do you think? Yeah, how old are you? 19? 18? 19, 18, and 19.
14.
Yeah? And 14. And 13. Okay, your name? Akram? Mustafa? Abu Bakr. Akram, Mustafa, Abu Bakr? Hamza? Usama. Okay, mashallah. Okay, what do you youngsters think would be a good way of cultivating youngsters? Points. What points do you think? Yeah, or things that maybe the parents are not doing, or elders are not doing. Yeah, Sheikh Ismail.
One of the key elements is as a parent, you're afraid always that your kid they might do a mistake. So accepting some mistakes, minor mistakes, that will help them out to eliminate in the future. Some parents, they think like, my child shouldn't be doing any mistake whatsoever. So if he didn't have a mistake, that means I'm happy. So we have to know how to deal with mistakes with kids. They will do, even adults will do mistakes, and sometimes misjudgment is said.
Very good, very good.
So I think this is one of the, we have to know how to deal with problems and mistakes and rationally, and not to jump to the conclusion all the time.
Let me just repeat these points. So Brother Ismail, he mentioned, knowing the mistakes and dealing with the mistakes in a proper way, and sometimes being wise and balanced. Like certain things you might need to sometimes allow, yes, and excuse them for, and other things you might not allow, depending on each situation. And remember, even with that Ismail, every person is going to be different. For one, you might be a bit more flexible, for one, you might not. And also, we're always looking at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is to keep the person in deen. Yeah? So that's a crucial point. So sometimes you might observe something, but you keep quiet on that because you want to genuinely keep that person in Islam.
One of the things is that the parents want the children to be like them. They are very old parents, they have pride, 40 years, 30 years, and they want to be like them, and they don't understand their physiology and their level of limitation, what they can do and what they can't do. Children want to play. And children, playing is very, very important part in their life, and stimulate them. So they reduce that gap, that activity, and they make them only focus on certain things to the point where the kids get bored very quickly, and they start going and deviated to do other things behind their parents, which they deprive them from doing it, or not being an example for them. Parent smoke, and he goes to his child and he says to him, why are you smoking? The father first has to be an example for his children, not to smoke in front of them or not to smoke at all. Then they can be able to take an advice from them. And the point I mentioned before is concerning the parent wants their children to be like them in terms of getting up for Fajr, and this is good, encourage them, but at the same time you could understand their level of mentality and understand the level of dealing with situation and what they can bear.
So Ustad Muhammad, he mentioned many points. Basically, sometimes parents want the children to be like them, and that's not practical and not realistic. Yes. And sometimes even they want the parents themselves want something from the children, but they're not doing it themselves. So this is unrealistic and unpractical. The parents should have real expectations for their children. One common problem is sometimes we're not really worried about what Allah Jalla wa Ala is thinking about a child or a person. A very common cultural mistake amongst Muslims, they would say, look, Fulan will say, people will say, you know what, our cousin will say, an uncle will say, an auntie will say. If they see you doing, you know, this should not be something we put into the child's mind, which should be, look, what does Allah Jalla wa Ala think of this? Not what people and me and so on. It's a concept. But what I wanted to mention is, again, out of the box slightly, is the angle of love. Yeah, like we mentioned, in terms of husband and wife, the angle of love towards children. Yeah, parents towards children. Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, when he mentions, discusses the hadith where the Prophet said, لا تحاسدوا. Yeah, what's the full hadith? لا تحاسدوا ولا تباغضوا ولا تدابروا ولا تناجشوا ولا يبيع بعضكم على بيع بعض وكونوا عباد الله إخوانا. He said, look, don't be envious of us, of one another. Don't hate one another. تباغضوا. When he explains this, he says, look how Islam came to bring about love. And then he starts giving examples in his book Jam' al-Ulum wal-Hikmah. So he says many ahadith. He says, for example, تسافحوا فإنها يذهب الشحنة. Shake hands, it takes away hatred. تهادوا تحابوا. Give gifts, it brings about love. Give salam. ألا أدلكم على شيء إذا فعلتموه تحاببتم أفشوا السلام بينكم. Shall not show you a way that if you do it, it will establish love amongst yourselves. Spread the greeting of peace. Islam comes with this concept of love. So saying this, parents, between parents and children, is this there? Again, when we go back to the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what kind of relationship did he have with children? What kind of relationship did he have with the youngsters? What kind of relationship did he have with his Sahaba? Was he that harsh individual? Or was he that soft, gentle, loving individual? So having a relationship with the youngsters, loving them, taking care of them, in a sense of rahmah and mercy. The Prophet also says, إِرْحَمُوا مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يَرْحَمْكُمْ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاءِ. Be merciful to those who are on earth, and Allah Ta'ala who's above the heavens will be merciful to you. So love and mercy in dealing with the children. But I want to hear from the youngsters. What do you think the parents should do towards youngsters?
Give them time.
Time. Okay, very good. Very, very, very good. Because that's one of the points I wanted to mention. Quality time or time. So families, do families actually get time or make time to sit down and talk? Yeah, or a father with a son, or a mother with a daughter, or a father with a daughter. Does that really take place? So that's why sometimes, look, when we are saying deen, are we really going back to the deen of the Prophet ﷺ? Because he gives time. I remember, subhanAllah, Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz, rahimahullah, you know, they had, after he passed away, rahimahullah, they had different scholars and his family members speaking. So he had 2 wives. So once every week, he would gather all the families and give them a lesson. You teach them once a week, gather all the families together, 2 families. Everybody has to come, his wives, his children, and he gives them a thus 1-2 hours, once a week. And this man had a busy schedule. We don't have that schedule. So are we giving that time, quality time, where there is discussions and talking and that understanding? Yeah? So for example, we sit with Abu Bakr and say, Abu Bakr there, Abu Bakr, you know, Abu Bakr, what are your needs? What do you want to study? Yeah? Okay, he says, I want to study something else. And I say as a father, you know what, only study medicine. That's the only thing you should study. Medicine, law and accountancy. These are the only things that are respectable and so on. But he doesn't want this. And I don't hear what he's saying, I'm not listening to him. So that communication and time, and with it listening to one another to understand what the youngsters want. What else? Hamza? What do you think?
Come back to me. Come back to me.
Usama?
I think they should give them rewards so they can motivate them.
Rewards, good. Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ would give rewards. You know, from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ say Jazakallahu khaira. Yeah, making dua, supplicating for them. Mustafa? Yes.
We understand the society, the youngsters.
Understanding the society. Yes. So understanding the society and the ills of society, and then to be able to deal with the youngsters what they are facing. Yeah. What's the things that the youngsters face? What's the biggest challenges youngsters face? Hamza?
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure.
Puberty.
Puberty. With the puberty challenges come. So like with peer pressure, the most common things would be drugs, girls, and music. Yeah. That's with puberty and peer pressure. Yeah. These are the three things. Now, understanding it, very difficult. Yeah? So that's why the youngster comes straight away. The one who wants Islam practicing, he'll come, I want to get married, I want to get married. Parents can't relate, parents can't understand, parents don't want to help him. Yeah? Pressures and difficulties. But understanding that, and sometimes, see, is music halal or haram? Difference of opinion, yeah? Look how, well, firstly, we have this perception, and we say, look, you know, generally we're very negative as Muslims, and that's not the sunnah of the Prophet. The Prophet in extreme situations, you know, in Arabic said at-tafa'ul, he was like positive. So Khabab comes to him, Khabab is being tortured, Bilal is being tortured, and they come to him and Khabab says, look, O Messenger of Allah, make dua and supplicate. The Prophet says, be patient, because there were people before you who are sawn in two halves. They didn't renounce the deen. The skin was removed, they didn't renounce the deen. And then he said, time will come when the traveler will travel from Sana'a to Hadramaut, fearing no one except Allah Ta'ala, and the wolves trying to attack his or her sheep. Look, the Prophet is in a situation of weakness. But look where he's thinking. And then the incident with the Suraqa ibn Malik. He's trying to kidnap him. He sees the Prophet and Abu Bakr, he tries to get closer. He's riding animals into the sand, first time, second time, third time, he realizes this is special. The Prophet told him, he said, Suraqa, you will have the bracelets of Kisra. Suraqa became a Muslim, was in the army of Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah, and he took the bracelets of Kisra. Meaning positivity, because sometimes when we speak about, we're speaking about this environment and just saying, look, it's negative. But sometimes the tarbiyah of children here is better than the tarbiyah of children in Muslim countries. You know, it's like the children, you find them fighting on the street. Stone fighting is very common in Muslim countries. Children, as soon as they can walk, they're on the street. You know, and then other social ills, you know, some social ills, for example, homosexuality. Some of the Muslim countries is rampant, and accepted amongst young boys, is like accepted as a norm. So I'm saying, look, while problems are there, there's a lot of positivity as well. At the same time, Hamza mentioned, look, how do we deal with sometimes negative points? And also, in dealing with something, what are we, so the brother mentioned, for example, okay, you know, you got this technology, you got the TV, you give the child a remote control. Okay, so he might say, look, you know what, it's bad, yes, shouldn't be too much TV and so on, but what is the alternative going to give? Because the dad is out and the mom's on the phone. Yeah, the dad is out and the mom's on the phone. So, okay, you're just going to leave the child to do nothing and just, you know, have nothing constructive. So we need to be looking into, and again, it can't just be hifz, it can't just be madrasa, it can't just be these things. Islam is much bigger than, you know, than how we might see it. So providing other alternatives which are halal and acceptable and okay. And as communities, as a masajid, as individuals, we need to be long-term looking into this and providing alternatives for our youth and ourselves and our families. With that, we conclude, brothers and sisters. Jazakumullah khair for your time. Anything wrong from myself, anything correct from Allah Jalla wa Ala. It is a pleasure sharing this time with you. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
الله يجزاك الله خير شيخ بارك الله فيك. I myself I almost thought I did everything wrong after this. May Allah help us to hear and follow the right thing. We need more time and more talk about these things. Maybe the open discussion should have been about this. But if we have time, we'll try if we can squeeze in, inshallah, to discuss this among us. And he's on YouTube. Advise the brothers to watch, inshallah, and to learn from this. This is very important for us. He's going to be share how we're going to. So I don't know if there is any question. quick questions, maybe for brothers, because we need to shut downstairs for 5 minutes.
Downstairs.
Just to. So, short and quick questions. Yeah.
The problem with the promise, this is a problem with the promise. When you promise a child, this is what you say like inshallah, but the child became now, no. So that's breaking now a lack of promise with the child. So when, if you can intimidate, you have to say, if you go excuse, you have to explain him as a grown up. So don't just keep promise and then you have kind of bad communication with them.
And also the other one is saying wallahi as well. Saying wallahi, you're not going to do this, but then you're going to let him do it. So yes, breaking promises, not fulfilling trust. So.
Question or comment?
Question.
Okay, go on.
Sheikh, what would you give, what nasiha advice would you give to the brothers and sisters that are working with the youths in Da'wah in the West? What nasiha would you give to them, inshallah?
Question was what advice in terms of giving the brothers who are working with the youth. And one point would be really understanding what they want. Yeah. So some of the points was listening to them, communicating with them, giving that time. The other thing is following the prophetic example. Yeah. The prophetic example in terms of dealing with them with love. Yeah. Remember, you have this book. What's the book? الرجال حول الرسول. Okay, but I had a cassette, so I don't know if this is from a book, but it says الأطفال حول الرسول. So there was those youngsters, and the Prophet made them leaders. Abdullah bin Umar, Abdullah bin Abbas, Abdullah bin Zubair. So what was the key prophetic way in making them leaders? You find many key points, but one was that love, that attention, that mercy. So sometimes we just want to do things in a harsh way, the prophetic way, in a gentle, loving way. Yes, and what's the hadith? If you put gentleness in something, what's the hadith in Arabic?
Yes,
موضع شيء شيء The Prophet said, gentleness is not put into anything except it beautifies it. And it's not taken out of anything except that it makes it disfigured and ugly. So there's many, but these, just two main key points.
Last question, Shah.
As a community, in trying to provide something better for the kids, what are the things that you can advise that we can do?
Many, there's a lot we can all do. But one thing is, brothers, sometimes with communities in masajid, we have, because I'm involved in masajid, many brothers and sisters will be what they call armchair critics. Yeah? We've got manpower, but we haven't got the manpower to do the work. Men are there, but the workers, you count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, you might get to 10. But those 10, the rest, few hundred, they'll be sitting armchair critics, they'll sit down, they'll say, you know what? This is not done. This should be done in the mosque. That's not happening. It needs the whole community to address these issues, and the whole community supporting the efforts. Many things can be done for the youth. But it's very important, like everybody mentioned, what do the youth really want? Because we might organize something for the youth, but you know what? They're not into it. And sometimes it might be, okay, we're having 10 activities, different targets, because each 10 serves a target audience for the youth. Some would like Qiyamul, some would like camping, some would like football, some would like youth Tarbiyah camp, some would like something else. But that really needs to be done with engaging with the youth, listen to them, and see what really appeals to them.
And give them responsibility, give them a sense of responsibility. If you just give them all the knowledge, old enough to know that.
Very important.
Yeah,
very important.
ownership, give them something like be in charge of or something, that will help them, that will give them that responsibility sense.
And remember, that's the prophetic way. Usama bin Zayd, 16, 17, he made him the leader of the army.
The variety of activity is very important, sport and this and that. But to be honest with you, brother, there are some who are very lazy. They don't want to take initiative. The building, mashallah, is big, but it's empty, and there are hundreds of youth are here, and we don't see them much. Where are they? So there is a bit of psychological aspect as well, and the feeling, sitting home and enjoying themselves rather than engaging and coming out.
You said they're lazy, the youth are lazy.
Yes.
Okay.
And the parents are not encouraging them as well, and telling them this activity is taking place, please go, and bringing them. If they can be able to have these two alternative way, I think